Well, hi there, everyone. It's been a while since we've checked in from the shop, so let's give you an update. That's paint. Paint and trim on the walls. All right, status report. We're almost into February. So close to February. Where did January go? Anyway, as you can see, I have gotten that door of Fable and Legend put in, the double door that I ordered on December 1st. Came in last week. Not too hard to install. One incredibly stupid thing about this double door is you'll notice that there's two sets of knobs. That's because the both left and right sides of the door came with holes for hardware, which I don't entirely understand. I honestly don't know if I noticed this when I ordered the door or not, and I'm not going to send it back to get another one because it took me 2 damn months to get this. This door is fixed to this dividing strip, and this is the actual functional lock hardware. Woohoo. And then, oh, that seals nicely. So yeah, it seems incredibly stupid, but the easiest thing to do was to buy a double lock kit and then only install half the hardware. So the right side of the door that actually opens and closes has all of the lock hardware installed, and then the left side, which is tied to the center support, I didn't put the actual lock mechanisms in because there's nowhere for them to fit. I just put in the knobs and the fittings so it covers the hole. That solution is actually cheaper than buying something like a push plate or pull handle for the inside to cover the holes over. Yeah, kind of dumb, but it works. I just hope I remember when I'm outside the door which one is the right one so I don't spend too much time fumbling with the keys. The OSB is covered with depending on the spot, 1 or 2 coats of primer. Latex primer, I used Kilz, but Zinsser would also work. That doesn't really provide anything except basic protection and something for the paint to stick to. Paint doesn't like to stick to OSB. It doesn't. So if you're going to put a proper paint on it, you need to prime it. And something like Kilz is good at priming surfaces that don't like to be painted. The first house that we bought was all wood paneling. And I say wood in the context of it looked like wood, but it's some sort of slick 1970s chemical that probably caused cancer in lab rats. So we painted over that with Kilz and then could paint it any color we want. It's a workshop. Why did you paint it? I'm going to spend a lot of time in here. I would like it to not be boring. OSB is boring. Also, OSB doesn't really handle moisture very well, and I don't intend for this to be a wet area. If we can protect it from, the wonders of Oregon, which sometimes, including right now, involve a little bit of rain, so be it. There are mostly 1, in some places 2 coats of this lovely Sherwin-Williams satin interior paint. Not a sponsor, but they could be. And then for the trim, we went with a brick red. Now, I'm making color choices. That's not what I'm famous for. My crayon box is very small. So, how do I achieve actual color choices that don't clash with each other? But it turns out that paint companies hire people that understand how colors work, and they make these little sheets. And they're themes with ridiculous names for the theme and the paint. So we picked out a couple of different color schemes, bought some paint samples, which are pretty cheap, tested them out on the walls after we primed, found a color that we liked, which is this sort of tannish color. It has a cool name on the sample chart that I've already forgotten. And then inside of that theme book are other colors that match that. Now, I did decide that I need pegboard in my life. It's an easy way to organize tools and got a lot of wall space, so it's going to be a good way to sort things out. The pegboard is painted in accent colors. And 2 of those colors, the green and the orange you see below, come from that theme chart, and the blue is a sample from an adjacent theme that Susan picked out because she thought it matched, and we already had the paint sample. Now here's a fun fact about paint samples. They're probably one of the cheapest ways that you can get a usable amount of paint for a small project. A Sherwin-Williams satin interior paint sample at your neighborhood Lowe's costs under $4. That is a pretty decent amount of paint. Each one of the pegboards and the matching wood that goes behind them as supports were painted out of those sample jars, and in most cases, after completing that entire job, we had some paint left over. That might be equivalent to a spray paint can, and yeah, spray paint is a good way to go. So spray paint has the disadvantage of not being able to be mixed to match. So if you want a specific color off of the palette selected for you by a Sherwin-Williams designer, you should probably buy the paint sample and get a brush or roller and do the small work. Now, there's a limitation of paint samples. They only come in a limited set of paints. In other words, if I want Sherwin-Williams at Lowe's, we'll just use that example, the HGTV line of paints that we used. I can only get that interior satin. Now, it turns out I want to use interior satin, but if you wanted a high gloss or some other kind of paint, the sample might not work for you. But in our case, cheap way to do it. In fact, the trim, this brick red, required a couple of coats. I'll go over that in a minute. And we went through more than a quart, but we didn't need a second quart to finish the trim, so I finished that off with an additional paint sample. Now remember the trim that we picked? That was just actually furring strips. Possibly not my wisest choice for trim. I shall explain. Furring strips are basically pieces of 2x4 that don't get to grow up to be 2x4. If you're not good enough to become a frame of a house, they cut you into smaller pieces and you become furring strips. Now, furring strips are great, cheap lumber for doing basic project work. Like, they're super inexpensive compared to other lumber, and let's be honest, right now in early 2021, still in the pandemic supply chain times, lumber's expensive. This is the most expensive lumber project I have done ever in my life. The other disadvantage of picking a bright color is that, especially on something that isn't primed very well, like our furring strips that have a coat of Kilz on them, they drink paint. 2 to 3 coats is required to kind of counterbalance the sucking up of paint and the showing of brush strokes, because I picked a bold color. That's a lesson learned for when we do a different project. We probably, if we cared about the paint quality more, we probably should have used a stain or paint grade wood, or a pre-primed like MDF trim. But again, the trim in here is more functional than decorative. It's covering gaps between the wallboard and the outside world. So I'm keeping some drafts from coming in. I'm reducing the number of critters that can crawl in through gaps in between the OSB and the existing wall studs, or the existing posts that hold up the barn roof. I'm a functional painter. If you look at the trim really closely, we cut some edges. It's not a perfect clean edge on it, but a lot of these things are going to get covered up. So I'm not that worried about it. It's a nice practice. If I really felt like it, I can go back and fix some of the little detail problems with the paint. I might do that later. But for now, at least the exterior wall, is far enough along to where I can start mounting pegboard. And the interior wall is only going to need one more coat of paint before we get around to putting in the flooring. The flooring is sitting outside on a pallet. Don't worry, I know it's raining, but the flooring's fine. It's water resistant, it's stain resistant. I didn't go out and get like hardwood for this. Trust me, you'll like the floor that I put in here. It's really functional, but that's its own video. For now, I am going to play with these pegboard pieces. Again, I got 3 of them cut to width to go on parts of the exterior wall, the one with the 2 big windows on it. And I'm just going to mount up the trim pieces, use some trim screws so I don't split the furring strips that we painted over, and then mount the pegboard on top of that. And once that's done, I will have that off the floor. I'll have those walls ready to start storing tools and coming up with a sorting system for how we're going to store things in here. Not only are these colors going to pop and make the room more interesting, but they'll also be part of a sorting system. Yes, things will go in the green space or the orange space or the blue space. Like, I don't know what that is yet because I haven't laid out all my damn tools, but at least I'll have a starting point for organization. All right, enough of me babbling. Let's put some stuff on some walls. rain's coming down, but the pegboard's going up. Yeah, the first orange piece went up, and it wasn't too bad. Something you will notice from the footage, however, and possibly from a little bit of the shiny glossy spots on here, is that when I was trying to brace the pegboard with my apron, I ended up scraping some of the paint off and had to go back after I mounted it and touch that back up. I'm a little concerned about that. It's possible that the white substance on the pegboard wasn't actually a primer, but just some kind of weird coating. And it's possible I will have to either touch this up if tools scrape it or coat it with something to try to keep the paint from getting scraped off from daily use. That was not something I anticipated, so I'm gonna hold off on putting up the green and the blue pegboard pieces until I figure out what's up with this surface. For now, I've touched up the scrapes that I made. I dug those a couple places where it actually, like, you can't see, but there's a couple of orange spots on my my little apron here. Maybe I have to clear coat these before I put them up. Maybe I have to roll something on this, or maybe it's fine and I just put too much of a rough Brian on it when applying it to the wall. Either way, it went up pretty easily. For the actual bit where I'm mounting the pegboard to the frame that I've put up, I'm not using the trim screws, I'm using wider head 2-inch screws, because the trim screw goes right through this soft material. Yeah, this pegboard's not very tough stuff. I mean, it hangs tools really well, but compared to, I don't know, OSB or other wallboards, it's not that structurally sound. They do make a stainless steel pegboard, which is a hell of a lot tougher, but also, per square foot, a hell of a lot more expensive. I gotta put up at least 3 of these, maybe a 4th, that are roughly 4 feet square. So maybe I'll stick with the cheaper stuff and hope I don't break it with the tools. Yeah, so my solution for the paint chipping problem is a satin clear coat with a sealant, which is not latex based. So open a window when you do this. And if you don't want something clear coated, try to avoid the overspray. This doesn't go on in a single coat according to the instructions. Supposed to apply it in several smaller coats, but you can do it a minute or two after you've applied the previous one, again, per the manufacturer's instructions. I'm just going to trim out the edges of this already mounted board, and like a good cooking show, I did the other two earlier. It should protect it. Later use. Maybe I should run a fan in here. Anyway. Yeah. Go turn the fan on. Alright, well, time to clean up after a successful project, but what are we doing next? Floor? Tool organization? Floor? Tool organization. Guess you'll have to watch the next episode to find out. Like and subscribe so you don't miss out. We'll see you on the next episode of Nerdsteading.